Brady Streets reporter of the New World Order letting y'all know what the fuck going on. So this Friday is actually supposed to be the last day that Congress had to negotiate and come up with a resolution regarding this border wall situation. Otherwise, the government is supposed to be shut down again. If y'all remember, when Trump first reopened the government, he said it would be open for 21 days and then they'll come back to the table. And if they don't have his $5.7 billion, which is what he wanted basically, that he was going to shut the government down again. Now the Democrats have added on a new demand to put a cap, which I guess sounds reasonable, but to put a cap on how many beds they would even allot, or how many detainees they would even have at 35,000 beds, I guess across all immigrant detention centers, with 16,000 of these beds reserved for people who've actually already lived in the U.S. And, as you could imagine, Trump is in a rage, already tweeting about it or whatever. He's supposed to be at El Paso, Texas today to hold a rally to try to galvanize, I guess, his base about the border wall. We'll see what happens. So there's a Russian archipelago. Archipelago is basically a cluster of islands, group of islands, if you will. You know what I mean? Like Hawaii has archipelagos. You could consider that to be one. Nevertheless, they in this one particularly sits in the Arctic Ocean. But still, they normally don't have polar bears all running through their shit. Well, apparently since December, they've had a total of 52 polar bears. And they don't give a fuck about no police dogs or no gates or none of that, whatever. So it's only a matter of time before they start thrashing human bodies, you know what I'm saying? And therefore they're calling it a state of emergency. This is obviously being attributed to climate change because the habitat of these polar bears is being affected greatly. So they're only seen as a matter of time before they start wreaking havoc on human life. So we'll see how this happens. Green Wall and graduation, protect the environment. Senator Amy Klobuchar is actually entering the presidential race. Her and Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's the senator for Massachusetts, Klobuchar, the senator in Minnesota, have both announced that they're running for president. There's an unprecedented 6 women that are running for president on the Democratic ticket this year. So we'll see how it happens and see how this pans out. I mean, there's history being made regardless. And Klobuchar, for those who don't know, during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, she's actually the one that was asking him if he had ever drank, and that's when he was just like, yeah, I like beer. Yeah, I like beer. Like, I think she was trying to ask if he had an alcoholic problem. He was dodging the questions or whatever. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. We got some movers and shakers in there. Can you trust them though? So at the Guggenheim Museum on Saturday night, there were a lot of people protesting at the museum because they want the museum and other art institutions to disassociate themselves with the Sackler family. For those who don't know, the Sackler family is responsible for, it's essentially they're the main benefiters of this opioid process, this opioid situation that we find ourselves in as American people, because a lot of people, it's like the number one killer of white folks. And people are dying left and right from opioid addictions. Let's keep it real. So this is all linked to the Sackler family, their ownership of Purdue Pharma, which has such a lockhold on the pharmaceutical industry that it's getting prescribed when it doesn't really need to be, and it's being done irresponsibly. So we'll see how this pans out, man. Washington Post reported actually that Amazon is reconsidering placing one of its headquarters in New York City. A lot of people have been opposed to it, including outspoken and youngest congressperson ever, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But many people have protested it because New York City is giving, and also DC or whatever, they're giving this company kickbacks. We're talking about Amazon, which is responsible for creating the world's richest man in Jeff Bezos, and he's at something like over 60-something billion dollars in his worth. Nevertheless, it's just kind of outrageous that they could end up getting like $4 billion from making their headquarters in New York and DC. But this shows the power of protest, because now they're reconsidering it, and it's kind of abysmal if you think about it. So stay tuned. Green Wall and graduation. Out in Denver, Colorado, teachers are actually protesting. I guess they protesting all over this motherfucker because they tired of being at the bottom of the barrel, even though they're very high priority, especially as it relates to just existing in this world. What we represent, graduation. You know what I'm saying? War, green, and graduation. You dig? But nevertheless, they're going on strike. They want higher raises instead of they want not higher raises. They want raises instead of incentives and bonuses. So we'll see how this pans out. This would be the first time that they've been on strike in a quarter of a century. So stay tuned, man. Like I said already, war, green, and graduation. So out at the Gaza Strip, and Israel and Palestine, whichever you want to call it or whatever you believe in, Israeli forces again shot 2 teenagers. One was a 14-year-old boy, and the other one was about like 17, 18. This tallies up to about 240, or at least 240. Probably around 250 people that have been killed by Israeli forces ever since last March, what they call the Great March of Return, when essentially they were protesting the U.S. Embassy moving there and establishing Jerusalem as Israeli, which is a big deal. It's a biblical moment actually, and it's estimated that many people have died and 23,000 have been injured. The police just been firing off. And it's sad that anytime you speak out of this, you're anti-Semitic. So we'll see how this pans out. So thousands of people have been protesting in Haiti, in the capital of Haiti, actually, Port-au-Prince, calling for, essentially, so to speak, calling for the president's head. President Jovenel Moïse, he's actually suspected of embezzlement of $4 billion that was actually supposed to go towards Petrocaribe oil funds. Petrocaribe is an alliance that Venezuela has with a bunch of Caribbean countries, Belize, Cuba, Dominican Republic, etc., for them to buy oil exclusively for them at discussed prices and all of that. So these $4 billion embezzlement basically is like the misplacement or the theft of funds. So some funny shit going on there. And from these protests, 2 people actually died. If y'all remember last year, there was actually some deadly protests as well going up against the fuel hikes. So we'll see what happens. Rio de Janeiro governor, that's in Brazil for those who don't know. Their governor, Wilson Witzel, he actually is ordered the Brazilian military police, to shoot to kill drug trafficking suspects. He thinks they need their own Guantanamo Bay because he's calling these people terrorists. Nevertheless, this past Friday, Brazilian military police went to do a crackdown on some drug traffickers, and it left 13 people dead. So, you have people that are suspecting that this is like basically some totalitarian type shit. You know what I'm saying? Like coming through trying to overthrow, shoot to kill. You basically being judge, jury, and executioner, so it's kind of wild. We'll see how this pans out. So the U.S. and Russia have been in talks with the United Nations about what the hell to do about this Venezuela situation. Russia thinks that no one should intervene. The U.S. obviously thinks that we should intervene. That they think they should have different elections because they're not acknowledging the current president as president. Current president Nicolas Maduro, and at the same time, they want to give them humanitarian aid. Now, the funny thing about this aid, they've been trying to get it in, and apparently there's been aid coming into Venezuela from us and from Colombia, and they've been refusing it. They see it as a Trojan horse, European military historical reference, basically saying that, they think it's with ill intent. Nevertheless, as I reported last week, that there's been a plane flying from Miami to Colombia and to Venezuela that have been trying to bring in weapons. Now it's humanitarian aid. We'll see what happens. So word got to Karen Civil, who's a popular hip-hop journalist, that Russell Wilson actually purchased the masters of R&B artist Ciara. And this is huge because he essentially, broke the shackles off of her hands and feet, you dig? Like basically freed her, gives her creative artistry freedom, and it apparently propelled her to creating her own record label, which is now called BME, Beauty Marks Entertainment. It's supposed to be the intersection between music and film and fashion and philanthropy and apparently technology. So that's a big salute to them. Even though there was formerly a BME recording label by Lil Jon and the East Side Boys. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything since they all from Atlanta, but That's what's happening. So, Black Democrat in Virginia, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, is actually there to succeed Ralph Northam, who I mentioned is actually the current governor, and is in hot water because he actually was caught in blackface photos in his Eastern Virginia 1984 medical school yearbook. And apologized for it, and he was standing next to a Ku Klux Klan member. Then he said it wasn't him, but he's done it before, dressed up as Michael Jackson. Get him the fuck out of here. But nevertheless, Justin Fairfax, though, is in his own hot water because a woman came out last week and said that she sexually assaulted her. Now, this woman revealed herself, turned out she's a PhD. Then another woman this past weekend basically said that he raped her while he went to Duke University. Now, this woman, not to mention, called a rape allegation against another Duke basketball player, and it was dismissed by the university. But nevertheless, dude wants a full FBI investigation against the shit. So Ralph Northam, the current Virginia governor, is refusing to step down amid this blackface photo situation where they found him dressed in blackface next to a Ku Klux Klan member or associated with the picture of this in his 1984 Eastern Virginia Medical School yearbook. Now he goes on CBS in the morning and I guess in trying to explain why he won't step down. He says he feels like he can help the state heal. He starts mentioning slavery. He's like in 1619 the first indentured servants came from Africa, blah blah blah, and Gayle King had to correct him, also known as slavery. He's like, yes. So that just kind of shows where his head at and his arrogance lies. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you won't even call him a slave. I don't know. It's just more fuck shit, but we'll see how that situation pans out. It's looking ugly. Justin Fairfax might be the succeeding governor. We'll see. So it is said that actually the Keystone Pipeline is most likely responsible for the oil spill that was seen in St. Charles County, Missouri, which is right next to the Mississippi River. So and also there's been like 100, and there's said to have been 137 oil spills in 2018. So there's all of this boasting by President Trump, especially during the State of the Union address about, how we're like the number one in, oil supply and all of that. And I haven't fact checked that part yet, but to me, it's also, even if we were, it's like, at what cost? You know what I'm saying? Are we supposed to go up in flames trying to sell the most shit? It's just kind of ridiculous or whatever, but gotta take care of the environment, or else the environment is gonna take care of us. Green, war, and graduation.